So we're here today with Brenda Darden Wilkerson, President and CEO of AnitaB.org and steward of the Grace Hopper Celebration, the world's largest gathering of women technologists named after computing pioneer Grace Hopper. She's also the architect of Chicago's original Computer Science for All initiative, which helped inspire the Obama administration's National CS for All movement. And she is not a Chicago native, but she is a Kansas native and a P33 board member, helping to shape the city, which is leading to quantum computing, advanced technologies, and equitable economic
I'm gonna
growth.
look behind me and see who is she talking about.
So Chicago has always been a city that builds movements from house music to now quantum. And Brenda has spent decades building a movement of her own, expanding who belongs in technology and who benefits from that. And before pipeline became pipeline and policy and inclusive growth and became strategy, you were already building both of those. And today, as a P33 board member, she is helping shape how Chicago competes in the next era of innovation and who actually gets to compete. So, Brenda, as someone deeply rooted in this city, what does it mean to you to help shape Chicago's tech future in this moment?
Building innovation, technical innovation in this city is deeply personal to me. I come from a family of pioneers who built things, neighborhoods, movements, and they did it out of a strong sense of leaving a place better than you found it. So that's how I was raised. I believe true innovation is about filling gaps. So when you find a gap that's worth filling, you decide if you've got what it takes to go and do it. And some of that is around coalitions. It's part of why I feel so strongly about P33, which has done that and continues to do that across the city and across the nation. So for me, we're at this crossroads where normally when there's some huge disruption, and we have the disruption of AI, we have the disruption, geopolitical disruptions, other disruptions, the first thing I think about is who's going to get left behind, who's going to get left out. And it's not about charity when you think about who's going to get left out. The innovation should come from anywhere. The work that I've been able to do, that to me is just normal. People talk about, oh, you did this, you did that. It was normal to me because I was filling a gap that I knew about. I wasn't trying to solve someone else's problem necessarily. I was trying to solve something that I knew about personally and I didn't want anybody else to go through. So innovation should be that. We should always be moving forward. When we think about the pioneers of the past, there was great sacrifice in that. And that's a word that people don't like to use. But it's truly our time to sacrifice, to build on where they brought us and take the community of citizens, the citizenry, forward to the next place. And so we have this amazing opportunity if we remember what I was taught, which is leave it better than we found it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just getting us grounded in Anita B and Grace Hopper celebration, which we mentioned a bit earlier. You lead this celebration, the largest celebration of women technologists in the world that's happening in the US. You've done it overseas as well. And for those who may not know, who was US Navy Rear Admiral Grace Hopper and why does her legacy matter so much?
Well, she was one of those pioneers who sacrificed. She was one of those people who said the tech should be open for anybody to do it. You know, when I came along, we were trying to move away from COBOL. People were making fun of COBOL. But COBOL was actually a barrier breaker, and she was the one that developed that language. She said we needed to be able to speak a language that we understood to the computer, not necessarily speak the computer's language, which some of us learned how to do, unfortunately or fortunately. So she created the first compiler. I think what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of the math and the trajectory around a lot of the innovation that we all enjoy today was made by people like Rear Admiral Grace Hopper. And so she opened doors and paved a way for those of us to even sit here today and have this conversation. And so what we try to do with the conference that is, and we call it a celebration, because a lot of her contributions and the contributions of many women who pioneered a lot of the technology that we use has been hidden. It has been erased. I don't know if you know of the picture of the big ENIAC computers that were in the room, and they had the women standing in front of them. And it was, and I'm not going to remember her name, about 10 years ago, who went back and actually did the research into who those women were, because when she asked who the women were, do you know what people said? Oh, those are just models who were modeling the computers. They were actually the ones who had learned to program the computers. The men are given credit for having built the computers, but they didn't know how to program it. And the women did. But when it was time to take the award, the women were directed to a different building, and the men went and took the award. Now, this is not about hate and strife and all of that. It's just about truth and history. And we're in this time where history is being pushed aside. And so if you don't know who or what happened before you, you're not going to be able to build on what they did, and you're going to make some of the same mistakes that they've already got solutions for. And so we try to make a stage where not only we talk about Grace and all of the other wonderful women who came before us, but we lift up the women who are doing things now, like Timney Gabriel and Joy Buolamwini and many, many others, that give them the credit for the innovations that they uniquely knew how to create. But it also inspires today's and tomorrow's folks who think, who am I? Could I possibly do this? And it's like, yes, you can. Look, they're just like you.
Fantastic. And AnitaB.org is the company. So I would love to know, who was Anita Borg, and how is this legacy being moved forward through the organization? We have the Grace Hopper celebration, but there are many other initiatives and convenings that happen throughout the year that's always on. But we'd love to start with, who was Anita, and how are we moving her legacy forward?
Yeah, so Anita was a PhD computer scientist. She's actually a Chicagoan, a Chicago area person. She was from Mount Prospect, and she was in the Bay Area. She worked for DEC. I don't know, some of these names I'm going to give y'all going to have to look up, okay? She worked for DEC back in the day, and was one of those pioneers who said, she looked around the industry and said, there are problems not getting solved because there are people not represented at the table. And so she coined the phrase 50-50 by 2020. And that was back in 1995. So we had plenty of time to be able to get there. Actually, 1985. So that was 15 years to get from where we were at that time. And I sort of relate, because those were my early days in technology, when there were actually 37% women. And so she thought, okay, we should be able to get another 13% done in that amount of time. And what she saw was this gap between where the industry was and where she thought it could be. So she really was a visionary. Unfortunately, we took a big tumble backward. In the early 2000s, we went as low as 12 to 14% women in technology. And then because we're global, we measure it internationally as well. It's still 15 to 18% in Europe. So her goal, first of all, was to give women a place where they could grow and be at home and have a network. Because, and this has been my experience, to go to technical conferences where there are very few women. And so as the story goes, she and 12 women were at this engineering conference. There was 12 of them. And as we do, they met in the bathroom and said, we got to do something about this. And from that, there was an organization called Sisters, SYSTERS, formed, that was really just like a feed where women could get together and share the challenges that they were having, whether it was at university or on their job, and help each other out technically, etc. And then from that grew, well, why don't we get together and have a conference where we can celebrate the contributions of women, learn and network together, and that's when the Grace Hopper celebration was formed.
Wow. Magic happening in the ladies' bathroom.
Yes, it always does.
It always does. And so just moving to P33 and as a board member, guiding Chicago strategies today in quantum, AI, and emerging technologies, what does inclusive innovation look like at the infrastructure level? And not just in programs, but in capital, policy, procurement, and leadership.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of what P33 does. We talk about innovation. Innovation happens everywhere, but innovation costs money. Innovation needs a space where people can collaborate together, many times with the same ideas, but they don't know about each other. Yeah. So networking together becomes very important. And so in the infrastructure, the capital needs to flow. We know that the numbers are still very paltry, where women and people of color, in terms of what they get as founders. That's a problem, right? And that's a systemic problem that could be solved by turning our attention away from the way things have always been to really thinking about how can we make life different from the way it is now? It's about doing something different from the pattern recognition than we've always done. That's what systems are built on, right? So when I could give so many examples of where the systems are just based upon what we've always done. If you even think back to most of the universities that most of us know about, they were not open to women because the pattern was we did not open education to women. Computer science started out way behind the 8 ball for women because when computer science curriculum was added to universities, women were not allowed to attend those classes. So that's a systemic problem. Okay, so and those are based upon belief systems. And so I wonder if we were to begin to see equity or exclusion as a systemic problem versus a charitable problem.
Yeah.
How could we differently create the systems that we build economically upon?
And then even going back to the CS for All, can you share the impact that that has had on the city of Chicago and moving to the national level underneath the Obama administration?
Yeah.
Some of the impact numbers behind that program that you launched and created.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. When I first went to work for Chicago Public Schools, there was no computer science department, if you can imagine, right? And I was brought in to head an IT program that was only at the high schools. And as I began to do the work, what I found is that the districts, and I found that education in general, looked at the BLS. I forget what BLS stands for, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they make their decisions as to what they're going to educate based upon those statistics. Well, those statistics are at least 5 years behind. And in those statistics, what was trending downward was the job computer programmer, because we weren't calling it that anymore. So as I began to understand and be included in meetings where we were redoing schools to update them for various curricula, my bosses were actually bringing me in to shut down IT. And I remember thinking that, well, that doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. And so that began the work of saying, no, we need more IT. But then I was like, we really need computer science. And so from doing that work, so that's changing a belief system, right? But from doing that work, what we saw was, starting at the high school level, we saw people change their minds about what people could do and what options students did have. And it kind of goes, I'm going to go kind of wind around this for a moment. When I raised my children, I raised them with a very simple saying. I told them, I want you to grow up and live free in a free country. Isn't that interesting? I said the free country part. Anyway, so I gave them a very simple definition of freedom. Options. The person who has options is free. The person who doesn't have options or doesn't know her options is not free. And so what I started to drive through the system was, let's give these students options, because what I was hearing is, well, students are not going to be programmers. They're not going to do that. And I said, well, their students probably are not going to be biologists, but we teach them biology. Why? Because an informed citizenry needs to be well-rounded. So what we began to see happen was that students understood their choices. And students who understand their choices have a different attitude towards learning. They started to do their own research. They were started hanging out in places like the library or being online doing research. And so we saw that's what I saw. Now, other people may have seen different things. And of course, we saw more students going into computer science. We saw more students choosing to go to college, feeling that they had the options. But what we also saw were students who were starting their own businesses, first at the high school level. And then as we began to expand backward, we saw middle school students starting their own businesses. We also saw teachers understanding that they could do something different as well.
Right.
We just visited Google, where they brought students and parents in. And I went in this one room, they were doing all this hands-on stuff, right? Went in this one room and there was a teacher, but she's not a teacher anymore. She's a technologist at Google.
Wow.
So we begin to see that people could go both ways. People in tech could go and educate, people who were educators. So we're opening up the possibilities for people, which to me is important in the city of Chicago, where many times we're so siloed. We've decided this neighborhood is only about this or that or the other thing.
That's right.
And so we don't get the richness of the background of all people. I built computer science for all because when I was growing up, I didn't have computer science. I had all of the other STEMs. I was top of my class. I got to Northwestern as an engineering student, and all the boys, because that's mostly what was in the class, they'd all had computers because that's how we did things, right? So what changed was what was available and what was an option, which in my mind creates more freedom.
That's fantastic. Amen, amen, amen. I'm just soaking it all in. So Chicago has been a city of neighborhoods, resilience, and reinvention. Where do you think we have a structural advantage that other tech hubs may overlook?
Well, I mean, we have this idea of what technology is now, but, I feel like technology is so many things that we don't think of as technology, and Chicago has been that place where those things were created. If you think about John Deere and the type of evolution or revolution that they created for farming and growing food was out of the invention of tractors that could do more than just the small space that the existing tractors could do. Right. And that was answering a need, that was filling a gap. So that's who we are in the Midwest. That's who we are in Chicago. And we do it quietly. We don't really, I don't think we walk in the fullness of who we are because of the oppression of the drama that is described of us. And so we have that grit and we have that courage and we have that ability to see what's necessary. And so what we need is to break down the barriers between the sides of the city so that the information and the opportunities can flow, whether it's in the people who are actually creating the technology or the people who are creating the infrastructure that supports the technology. That's what makes a city vibrant. And that's what gives it the ability to attract others who would support the innovation as well, who would bring funding, who would bring ideas, who would bring the companies that we would like to see in the city. And so we have that unique opportunity to be attractive in that way. We need to boast a little bit more about the things that we have done and stop thinking that we're following the coasts. I don't think we are. And I don't think we have to.
Yeah, I agree. And if we get this next decade right in quantum, compute, inclusive talent, what changes for those communities across the neighborhoods?
Yeah. Well, the veil of, oh, Chicago, the crime-ridden, whatever the drama is that we hear about Chicago, that just isn't true, gets lifted.
Yeah.
When people believe, they create. They change their neighborhoods. They put down roots in ways that attract other people of like minds. We get this right, we lift the economic standard for the city. We set an example for the rest of the country of what it looks like when a truly diverse city works together to make things happen. We have an opportunity to show what welcoming neighborhoods look like. I love, one of the things that I love that P33 has done is that Quantum's on the south side. I love the fact that the Exchange is on the south side. You know, nothing wrong with the north side, nothing wrong with the west side, but the fact that we thought to develop in areas that others would not think to develop in. One of the things that I think about Chicago is we know how to do the hard thing. And innovation, especially when you're going into the wind. You're going into the wind when you're doing something that people think you can't do, comes from being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so the work of Quantum is so far ahead of wherever else I've been, what I'm hearing other people do. And we're doing it here in Chicago. Stand up, stand proud, and do it. And change the city. And don't be bashful about it. It's a big deal. I think you know it's a big deal. You kind of know it's a big deal? Okay. Yeah, it's a big deal. But be proud that you had the foresight to step into a space that is this critical to our future and be willing to continue to do the hard thing of including everybody while doing it.
I love that. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. And just getting to know you, Brenda, the woman. I've heard some past interviews from you. You were their middle child, 4 children, just learning that today. I'm like, how did she do all of this with middle child? But understanding how that shaped how you care about others. And I thought that was really important. And you potentially being a doctor and now what guided you on this path into computer science?
Yeah, so I think the important thing that I want to share about that is, middle child. My parents were very demanding educators. I had few choices, doctor, lawyer, engineer. They already had their lawyer and they had an accountant. So doctor was what I was supposed to be. And I was like, compliant child, okay. So as a kid, I was watching surgeries and doing all that kind of dumb stuff. And I was going to, do that thing. And so when I got to Northwestern, my pre-med path, because they don't have a pre-med major, I had to pick something that covered those requirements. And that's how I picked biomedical engineering. And that's how I was introduced to programming, because all engineers had to take 2 programming classes. Never had it before because we didn't have it. Okay. So at the same time, I said, okay, Mom, I'll do the doctor because I wanted to help people. I wanted to be the person who could actually stand in between and be supportive. I had a a major accident when I was a kid, and I remembered how they treated me and my parents in the hospital. I had a head injury. They were willing to kick me out of the hospital early. I have a whole history there. Yeah. And so I wanted to be that different doctor. But then as I began to look at what it meant to be a doctor, I realized, okay, don't want to offend anybody here. It was all about pharma. Don't like pharma. Just my own personal thing. I don't like how medicine is practiced in this country. And so here I am, preparing to do something that I don't like the system. And so it really kind of tore me apart. I was like, okay, mom said doctor, and I want to help people, but ew, I don't really like how they're doing things. And so I started to look around and say, what else could I do? And so I actually changed my major 4 times, much to my parents' chagrin. And I finally landed on computer science because I was like, yeah, that's that programming thing. I kind of like that. And that's, that kind of worked for me. So actually I said, you know what, let me just leave and go to work and see if I really like this before I finish the degree. So I went to work at Sears, at the
Okay.
Sears Tower,
Yeah.
in there, I forget what they called us in those days. But anyway, programming assembler. Y'all know what that is?
No.
Good. Okay. So, and I said, okay, good. It worked. And so I went back, got my degree, and then that started my career. And so the one thing that I especially want to say to those of you who are young and women specifically, we are socialized to serve. And I am a servant leader, but there's an extreme that allows us to have a crisis at some point that says, right, who am I really? Because I spent my career finding places to serve. I found what was in front of me to do. It wasn't necessarily what I set out to do. It was what I found to do. And so that gave me my winding road.
Yeah.
Now, that wasn't necessarily bad because I feel like every experience I had winding through tech and then winding through education, because I left tech and went to higher ed, prepared me for this role. But would I have chosen those things? I don't know. I don't know. But what I would also say to you is when you wind and it feels like a failure, it's just preparing you for ultimately what you could do if that's what you want to do. So they both of those things going. I'm not sorry for anything that I'm doing, but I always want to say that too. Many times we just, whatever, I'm here to help. I'm the middle child. I'm here to help you. What do you need? And what I would love to see for innovation in this city is for people to understand more intentionally what they bring to the table and fight for that, because that's ultimately what we need from them.
That's good. And that is leading it to my next question. You've spent decades building pathways for others. What do you hope for this next generation to build and carry forward? Young women, women of color, what do you think that they should take away from your journey, and for you inspiring them for their next thing?
I hope that they understand the balance better, because understanding the balance better will allow them to create things that give others balance.
Drop the mic on that one. Can you really have it? Some say you can have it all, but not all at once. Speaking to someone who has built national programs recognized by Obama, worldwide celebrations, the largest, with 4 children, a wife, a daughter, a sister. How did you find the balance? And I probably am skipping.
I don't have it. I don't have it. I mean, I really have to. I know how to tell others. What does your mother say? Do as I say, not as I do.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
I know how to tell others because I know how to reach into the well of what I've been through and say, it would be better if you did this. It'd be better if you tried that. I also am a learner. I observe other people and watch what they do and balance that against myself. I was recently in South Africa, and that was an amazing journey. We were talking about the diaspora, African diaspora around digital intelligence. It was an amazing conversation. So there were people there from 8 different countries in Africa on the continent, and a bunch of us from Europe and the US. And the thing that struck me the most was they asked the question. They asked, where do you feel most at home? And all of the Africans had a very specific place. Those of us from the United States said, we don't ever feel at home. Where's home? Right? And so as you feel like What I want people to do is to create home for everybody. That's what I want. I want people to create a space where people can learn and grow and love and teach and pass on the wisdom. It should be multi-generational. We should respect the old, the young, everybody in between, because out of that is where the innovation comes. If you think about music, you mentioned music. A lot of the people who we respect the most for music stole it. They listened to other people. And then they took it and they developed something else out of it. But they listened. It was stolen in my mind, but they were listening. So how can we listen without theft?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we give credit where credit is due? And never forget that it's about people. I don't care how technical it is. If it doesn't serve people, be damned. Period. That's the whole thing. If you can't see a face or a family or a neighborhood in your work, it's not good work. So that's what I want people to remember.
That's good. Switching over to board. I want to stay there, but I'll talk to you later about your trip to South Africa. That sounds amazing. Okay, so how did you first come to know P33 and what made you say yes to serving on the board?
I love Penny, and
Yeah.
I was watching her. And then when I was asked to join, I was like, well, why?
Of course you. Of course you.
God. And I think the fact that it was about Chicago and the strength of Chicago and really making Chicago that premier space because of all the ingredients we just talked about, right? Yes, beautiful tech, but because we could do it for a citizenry that deserves to be put first, grown, developed, a city that, I mean, look at that, good grief. It's a beautiful place. Has an amazing history, and we can draw on that. And this group was trying to do something with that. I thought, yeah, I got to be there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we thank you for your service. We partner with Grace Hopper across Tech Chicago Week. Brenda has always just lent a hand, and so we're really grateful for that. And so when you step into a board role, and many of us, some of us are on boards and some are aspiring to be on boards, what responsibility do you feel when stepping into that role?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a CEO and I have my own board. I relate so closely to Brad and Nuwan in that leadership role, especially in this board. And I think about, okay, what would I need? Because a board is here to support the CEO. And if the board supports the CEO, well, then the whole team gets supported. And so I feel it my responsibility to be able to give them what they need. Now, I can only give them what I have, right? I feel like I have uniquely workforce development experience, my work with just supporting people in general and keeping that center, and then keeping the concept of diversity is very important in the conversation. And if a board is done right, then you have people who fill different roles. No board member can fill every role. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But all together as a complement, they should be able to give the company and the leadership the type of support they need to be able to make the best decisions, to be able to think about the future in balance with the present. And I'd like to think that if a board member can do that, if I can do that, then I've done my job.
Fantastic. And just getting into the personal side, I wanted to go there a bit earlier, but you're operating at a national and global level. Just how do you just personally balance leadership with life?
Well, I think I told you I'm getting maybe a D
Yeah.
there. When I was in education space, one of the things that I noticed, because they're big bureaucracies, right, is many times the people who are making the decisions don't see the people they're making decisions for. And so when I left higher ed and went into administration at CPS, I just would go out to the city, go out into the schools. I would meet with the administrators. I would meet with the teachers. I would meet with the kids so that my decisions were always grounded on their needs, not on what I thought. And that balances me as well. So, as intellectual folks, as we are, right, we kind of prize our knowledge and our pursuit of knowledge. But if we don't stay grounded in what it's for, and we don't keep a fresh perspective on who we're serving, we're going to be, it's a sin. Sin means off the mark.
That's right.
Right? So if a plane takes off and is, 2 or 3 degrees off its trajectory, when it lands, it's not going to land where it's supposed to. The only way we can continue to make sure tech, especially tech with AI and now quantum, serves people is to pay attention to the people or stay close to the folks that do care about the people. And so for my own life, I have to stay close to my kids. I have to stay close to the folks, the women that we serve, traveling around to various places in the world that we represent and touching those people. That helps me make sure that I do the best I can to stay on track.
Yeah. And so when you're fully off duty, what is the perfect day for Brenda?
Depends on the season. Right now, there's a fire in the fireplace. There's a great cup of coffee. In the morning, there's some delicious blueberries. And there's a book to read. I'm always about learning, dreaming, imagining. I like quiet. I know how to talk. I don't talk a lot. He probably says, "Are you kidding me? You talk all the time."
Talking to Quincy.
But I'm actually introverted. So being able to be alone in my thoughts with all that favorite stuff around.
Yeah, I love it. That sounds fantastic. And so just your career reflection, what is a bold bet you took in a career that felt risky at the time that proved to be transformative?
I bet on one of the most challenging educational systems on the planet that they could change.
Wow.
And it did pay off. We passed a graduation requirement. I was very proud when the first 100,000 kids graduated.
Wow.
In 2020 with a computer science.
Can we just give it up for him? That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy town. Okay. It was crazy. I'm writing a book.
Amazing.
Where I'll share about it, but it was actual crazy town. But, and sometimes I felt like I did that out of my bone marrow because I had to do the job I was doing because people didn't believe. That's the other thing. The image of who can must change. Because when I would show up and say I'm a computer scientist, I would get from everybody. There was like, what would you know about that? So a lot of my work was the barrier of that, right? Getting people to believe. And so being willing to do the job I was paid to do and basically entrepreneur, this other thing, was a big deal. And it was a sacrifice to my family. I have 4 kids that got ignored some, right? I don't recommend that. But I don't know how sometimes it doesn't, I don't know how, especially for a woman.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, my husband was an executive. My kids at one point were in 4 different schools. I would, because he was important. I was just at the district. I drove those kids to 4 different schools.
Wow.
Right? So, but that's what women do.
That's right.
I don't recommend it. But there's an opportunity now. Here's what I want for the women. I want us to figure out what makes us successful instead of being on the goose chase of what other people say. I want us to figure out how to get back to what we were talking about, where we created our support systems, so we didn't have to be superwoman because
That's
we
right.
were doing it alone, right? And because we've seen that there's no savior coming, no one cares, that we have to do those things. So we have to care and create those spaces. I don't even know what I'm talking about now because I forget what you asked me, but I thought I would share that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. We were sharing, my Nigerian in-laws moved in with my husband and I a floor below. She had a similar circumstance, but how we were able to do what we needed to do during COVID, and without them, we wouldn't have. And I had my sister at the time. She said, I couldn't do that. You shouldn't live with your in-laws. But making that decision to pull in family or
Yeah.
pull in that community when you need it is
Yeah.
key. Because sometimes your passion is outside the home, and you do want to fulfill those dreams, and you are fulfilling those dreams, and you're doing a fantastic job
Thank you.
at doing that. So what is one lesson that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh, if I could shake my conditioning. Shake the conditioning.
Share more.
You know, when I was raised, it was you heard girls, keep the skirt down, keep your legs together, sit up straight, all of that stuff. We were judged on that. You know, don't talk too loud, don't talk too, all of that stuff got in the way of me moving forward many times because of the expectations. You're not supposed to do that. You're from that neighborhood. You're that black girl. You're that whatever. If I could have learned to not listen to any of that, I think I could have been much further along than I am right now. I share that with you, so hopefully if there's any conditioning you need to shake, you shake it. Women, come on. Brilliant women. Brilliant.
Yeah.
What would you do if the expectations that were placed upon you by people who love you, if you could shake them? What would you do? Who would you be? How different would the world be if you could do that? That's what I wish.
That's
It
good.
wasn't all bad,
Yeah.
but it wasn't all good.
That's so good. So we're going to transfer over to rapid fire, Chicago-based. I know you grew up in Kansas City, so some of this is based on the latter part of your life.
Okay.
Cubs or Sox? Neither. You can say
Knitting.
neither. Favorite Chicago neighborhood?
Chicago proper or Chicago area?
Whatever you choose.
Evanston.
Evanston.
It's
I love
where
Evanston too.
it's where I started out. I still love it.
Yeah. Go Cats.
That's right.
Favorite Chicago summer moment?
Anytime that I'm on the lake. I love watching the sunrise on the lake.
House music or R&B?
Ooh, R&B.
Yeah, same. Favorite Chicago artist or song that takes you back?
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Imagination. Imagining. I love to imagine. I love that song.
I love it. Ketchup on a hot dog, yes or no?
When I ate hot dogs, ketchup on a hot dog. I no longer eat tube steak.
Yeah. And our previous Behind the Boardroom guest spoke about the power of watching you uplift women in technology. Amanda Lannert, who is the CEO of
Yeah,
Jellyvision. I've seen you walk out on the stage, and honestly, it's divine. Like the lights are glowing, but I see you in your calling. And they say many are called, few are chosen. I'm like, she is called and chosen to be in that space. But there is a radiance that comes from you, and everyone feels that. And so she expressed that beautifully when she was here last. But you were lifting, obviously, all women technologists through the Grace Hopper celebration. But who is someone who consistently lifts you up?
Okay, when I was thinking about this, I'm trying to be obedient and give you one person.
It's okay.
I love Anita Hill.
Oh, wow.
I love her. I got to meet her years ago,
Yeah.
and she is just a human being. And she's done more than anybody ever knows about. We think about her in front of that, with Clarence Thomas
That's
a
right.
zillion years ago. But since then, she has been the person who authored much of the legislation that's against sexual harassment in the workplace. I don't know if you knew that. And so she's been very active across her lifetime, and she's just quiet and deep. And so, and I like to brag, she's in my cell phone. And sometimes we just talk, and
Wow.
I get that wisdom from her, that I get wisdom and strength from her. But I also think about Joy Buolamwini, who is brilliant. If you don't know her and you haven't read her book, read her book. She's another person who, out of her own circumstances, has created all of the work that has impacted legislation around facial recognition. I don't know if you know her story, but she's a dark-skinned, I think she's like second or third Nigerian. And she was at MIT, and they had some type of assignment to do that had to do with facial recognition, and the software couldn't see her face, but it could see her classmate's face. And so, because she's also an artist, you got to know this woman. Oh my God. She had a white face, like one of the clown faces, or she picked up the white face and it could read that.
Wow.
But it couldn't read her face. And out of that, she has, if you go to the airport and you see that sign that says you don't have to be scanned, thank Joy for that. She's the one that did that.
Wow.
She's testified before Congress. She's done so many things that have really brought attention to the fact that facial recognition software is just not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So these are people who, again, they've sacrificed.
Yes.
They've done a lot, but out of their own experiences, we're all better off.
That's fantastic. Those are two powerful women that are lifting you. Yeah. I have so many all in the mic throughout the whole. So forgive me, audience, because she dropped so many gems. That is our time. We are so grateful for you not just being on P33's board, but the work that you do across the city, across the state, across the nation, now across the globe, for women of color, those who are not heard. We see you, Brenda, and we're so grateful for you.
I'm humbled by that. Thank you so much.
So
Thank you
grateful
guys
for
for listening.
Yes.
It's so
Thank
wonderful
you.
to be here.
I have to do my Oprah clap.